Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching Namaste World, your daily window into the biggest stories shaping India and the world. We begin in America, where Zohran Mamdani's New York City mayoral race turns into a fiery showdown with President Donald Trump. As the latest US poll results are out, America also bids farewell to former US Vice President Dick Cheney, a towering but divisive figure who reshaped history. Back in Russia, Russia's sunflower oil quietly dominates Indian kitchens, turning sanctions into a trading triumph. In Washington, Donald Trump sparks global outrage by hosting ex-al-Qaeda commander turned Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa. But the biggest news of the day, Indian origin leaders in America, Zohran Mamdani, Ghazala Hashmi, Aftab Pureval and Balvir Singh score landmark victories in the latest US poll results. All that and more. Global flashpoints, power plays, and the stories that matter coming up in this edition of Namaste World. Huge night for Indian origin trailblazers in the latest US poll results, with 4 big victories in just the last 24 hours. First, New York City makes history. 34-year-old Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist, secure a major victory, beating Andrew Cuomo to become the Big Apple's first Muslim and first South Asian mayor. Mamdani is son of famous filmmaker Meera Nair and shares the Indian heritage. Indian origin woman from Hyderabad, Ghazala Hashmi, shatters another glass ceiling in Virginia to become the first Muslim woman elected to the office of Lieutenant Governor. Sweeping in with the Democratic wave, Aftab Pureval got re-elected in a landslide in Cincinnati. This man with Nepali Indian roots is now city's 2-time mayor. And in New Jersey, Balvir Singh holds strong Sikh Democrat re-elected to the state assembly, fighting for immigrant and equality in District 8. From city halls to state houses, the Indian diaspora is writing new chapter in the American politics. In a move shaking global diplomacy, President Donald Trump will host Syrian leader Ahmad al-Sharaa, once known as the notorious al-Qaeda commander Abu Mohammed al-Golani, as Washington trades morality for strategy. Is America rewriting the rules of engagement in West Asia? Here is a report by Farhan Khan.
In a move that's making global headlines, US President Donald Trump is all set to host Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa at the White House, the first ever visit by a Syrian leader to Washington. The meeting, expected on November 10, marks a historic moment in US-Syria relations and a deeply controversial one.
زيارتنا أيضا إلى واشنطن في الشهر بداية الأسبوع القادم أو الأسبوع الأول من شهر نوفمبر تأتي أيضا ضمن نفس السياق أن سوريا منفتحة على الجميع. فخامة الرئيس أحمد الشرع سيكون في البيت الأبيض في بداية شهر نوفمبر. هذه الزيارة بالتأكيد هي تاريخية وربما هي أول زيارة لرئيس سوري إلى يدخل البيت الأبيض في عبر ربما أكثر من 70 سنة و 80 سنة الماضية. بالتأكيد هناك الكثير من المواضيع التي يتم الحديث عنها، بداية من رفع العقوبات، فتح صفحة جديدة بين الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية وسوريا. نريد أن تكون هناك شراكة قوية جدا بين أمريكا وسوريا.
Ahmad al-Sharaa isn't your regular statesman. Before becoming Syria's president, he was known to the world as Abu Mohammed al-Golani, a former al-Qaeda commander with a $10 million US bounty on his head. He once fought American troops in Iraq and spent years in US custody. Fast forward to 2025 and the same man is walking into the White House not as a prisoner but as a guest of honor. The visit follows a quiet meeting between Trump and al-Sharaa in Saudi Arabia earlier this year, the first encounter between the two nations' leaders in 25 years since Hafiz al-Assad met Bill Clinton in 2000. For Washington, this isn't just about Syria. It's about realpolitik, cold, calculated diplomacy dressed as reconciliation. On paper, the official agenda is to sign an agreement for Syria to join the US-led coalition against ISIS. But beneath the surface, there's a lot more going on. For Trump, hosting al-Sharaa could serve 3 goals. First, it's a foreign policy win ahead of elections, a chance to look like the peacemaker who brought Syria back into the fold. Second, It's a way to counter Russian influence in Damascus, especially after al-Shara's warm meeting with Vladimir Putin last week in Moscow, where he pledged to restore and redefine ties with Russia. And third, the Israel factor. The US is pushing for a broader West Asia peace framework, especially after Israel and Hamas recently implemented a fragile ceasefire and hostage deal. Trump wants to rally regional players, including former pariahs like Syria, to stabilize the post-war order. The White House likely sees al-Sharaa as a necessary, if unsavory, player in shaping what comes next. Still, critics are calling the move morally dubious. Hosting a man once aligned with al-Qaeda raises tough questions about America's selective memory and strategic hypocrisy. Is Washington normalizing a former jihadist simply because it suits US interests? The optics aren't great, especially after Israeli strikes in Gaza killed over 100 people earlier this week, threatening the fragile ceasefire Trump claims to support. Against that backdrop, inviting a controversial Syrian leader to Washington looks less like diplomacy and more like damage control in a region on edge. As Trump rolls out the red carpet, one thing's clear. This isn't about friendship, it's about influence, and in the ruthless chessboard of West Asian politics, morality often comes second to strategy. With Farhan Khan, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Former US Vice President Dick Cheney, one of the most powerful and polarizing figures in American politics, has passed away at the age of 84. From shaping the Iraq War to defying Donald Trump in his final years, Cheney's legacy is both haunting and heroic. How will history remember him? Here is a report by Dibangana Datta.
Former Vice President Dick Cheney has died at age 84. And with him goes one of the most powerful, controversial, and polarizing figures in modern American politics. Cheney did not just serve as Vice President under George W. Bush. He redefined the office entirely. This was not ceremonial ribbon cutting. This was power, raw, concentrated, and largely unchecked. Let's be clear about what that power meant. On September 11, 2001, while President Bush was rushed to safety, it was Cheney who took control. From a bunker deep beneath the White House, he authorized the military to shoot down hijacked planes. He wasn't asking permission, he was giving orders. But Cheney's legacy will forever be tied to three words: the Iraq War. He was the chief architect, the driving force, the man who looked America in the eye and said, "We will be greeted as liberators." He told us Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. He insisted that there were links between Iraq and the 9/11 attacks. None of it was true. No weapons were ever found. No al-Qaeda connection existed. And as American troops weren't greeted as liberators, they walked into a civil war that killed thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis. A war that cost trillions of dollars and destabilized an entire region. Even when the intelligence was proven wrong, Cheney never backed down. In 2015, he declared, "I was right about Iraq." He defended torture, what he called enhanced interrogation without apology. "I would do it again in a minute," he said. That's the Cheney millions remember. The man who earned the nickname Darth Vader. The man Democrats despised for decades. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn. In his final years, Dick Cheney did something almost unthinkable. He broke with the Republican Party he helped build. Why? Because of Donald Trump. When Trump refused to accept his 2020 defeat and incited the January 6th insurrection, Cheney did not stay silent. He called Trump a coward and the greatest threat to our republic in 246 years. He appeared at the Capitol on the anniversary of January 6th, the only Republican there besides his daughter Liz Cheney, who would lose her congressional seat for standing against Trump. And in 2024, Dick Cheney, lifelong conservative, Iraq war hawk, Republican vice president, voted for Democrat Kamala Harris. Let that sink in. The man Democrats once considered a war criminal endorsed their candidate. Because as he put it, we each have a duty to put country above partisanship. His daughter Liz summed up his final chapter perfectly. My father chose country over party. So who was Dick Cheney? Was he the architect of disaster in Iraq? Absolutely. Was he the man who championed torture and expanded executive power to dangerous levels? Yes. Did his policies damage America's reputation worldwide? Without question. But in the end, when American democracy itself was under threat, this deeply flawed, deeply conservative man drew a line. He chose the Constitution over his party. That's the complicated and contradictory legacy of Dick Cheney. A man of immense power who made catastrophic decisions, but who in his final act defended the republic he had served for 5 decades. Whether history remembers him as villain or patriot may depend on which chapter you're reading. But one thing is certain, Dick Cheney changed America, for better and for worse. With Dipangana Datta, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As sanctions squeeze Russia's crude oil exports, another oil is quietly seeping and dominating Indian kitchens, sunflower oil. With prices low and supply steady, Moscow has overtaken Kiev to become India's top source. But as trade thrives amid conflict, is India's kitchen diplomacy outpacing its foreign policy? Here is a report by Rudrashish Kanjilal.
India's kitchen staple is experiencing a quiet revolution, and the surprising winner is Russian sunflower oil. While Russia's crude oil exports to India have slowed amid US sanctions, sunflower oil has been on an unstoppable rise. In the last 4 years, Russia's sunflower oil exports to India have surged 12-fold, leaving Ukrainian supplies far behind. Industry insiders say the reason is simple: reliable access to seaports and competitive prices. Since the Russia-Ukraine war erupted in 2022, Kiev's sunflower oil exports have largely shifted to Europe, leaving India searching for alternatives. Russia stepped in to fill the gap, offering a short supply and competitive rates, becoming India's largest sunflower oil supplier. Sunflower oil is India's most consumed cooking oil, yet only 5% of it is produced domestically. The numbers tell the story. In 2021, Russia supplied just 175,000 tons of sunflower oil to India. By 2024, that figure exploded to 2.09 million tons, making up 56% of India's total sunflower oil imports. The war reshaped the global sunflower oil market. Ukraine, once India's top supplier, had to reroute shipments to Europe via road and rail after Moscow blocked Black Sea ports. That drove up transport costs, making Russian oil a more attractive option. India imports nearly 60% of its cooking oil, relying heavily on palm, soybean, and sunflower oils. Domestic sunflower cultivation has declined since the 1990s as farmers moved away from the crop when cheaper imports cut into profits. Now, the market is turning back towards imports, with sunflower oil prices recently dropping below palm oil for the first time in years. The result? Russian sunflower oil has quietly become the backbone of India's kitchen, a market triumph born out of geopolitical disruption. Even as crude oil faces sanctions, one commodity continues to flow freely and profitably from Moscow to New Delhi. From cost savings to supply reliability, Russia's sunflower oil is proving that in a world of sanctions and conflict, some markets remain untouchable. With Rudrashish Kanjilal, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As we wrap up today's show, here is a quick look at the top stories making waves around the world. A UPS cargo plane crashes after takeoff in Louisville, erupting into a massive fireball, killing 7, injuring 11, and halting airport operations overnight. At least 66 dead and hundreds of thousands displaced as Typhoon Kalmagi devastates the central Philippines, flooding Cebu and triggering deadly landslides and chaos. Paris prosecutors launch probe into Shein, Temu, and AliExpress and wish after the childlike sex dolls found on Shein's platform, sparking outrage ahead of the Paris store opening. From breakthroughs in technology and business to political developments and natural disasters, stay tuned as we bring you the latest updates, key developments, and everything you need to know all in one place. That's all for now. See you again tomorrow at the same time on Namaste World.